All right. It's time for Buckeye Grove Instant Access.
It's about time.
With the latest breaking news, analysis, and much more from around the world of Ohio State. Brought to you by BuckeyeGrove.com and the Unscripted Ohio Podcast Network.
You're so money and you don't even know it.
Let's move quickly and hand it off to our host, Kevin Noon.
It's time to start running!
Hey, welcome to the BIA podcast. I am your host, Kevin Noon, and thank you for joining us this week. It's been an exciting week here at Buckeye Grove as we've welcomed in several new staff members, and now we're going to turn our attention to our newest team writer. I'm going to welcome in Griffin Strom here in a second. We are really excited to bring him in. He has got quite the pedigree, and, first and foremost, welcome, Griffin. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm very happy to be here, at Buckeye Grove. Kevin, how are you doing today?
Hanging in there. Some crazy times we're living in right now, but, we're not going to get into any of that. But, let's kind of talk a little bit about you. That's what this, special edition of the BIA podcast is about. And, you have just come out of, just graduated from Ohio State. You're a local guy. Why don't you fill our listeners in a little bit about your background and what led you here?
Yeah, no problem at all. So, I'm a local guy. I'm from Bexley, Ohio, actually, which is about 15 minutes from campus. So I've always kind of lived, in the shadow of campus and the Horseshoe, Ohio State, everything like that. I only took a visit to Ohio State. I didn't really consider too strongly anywhere else. It was kind of always like I was always going to end up at Ohio State for college. Even in high school, I started doing journalism stuff. I was on the school newspaper there. It was called The Torch for 2 years. But I never got into sports writing when I was doing that. It was just kind of news and stuff at the time. But I've always been huge into sports. Ohio State, like I said in my introductory post on the message board on the Buckeye Grove website, honestly, some of my first memories in general, I remember having a big party at our house in Bexley for the 2002, national championship game. When I would have been like 6 at the time. That's some of my earliest memories. I remember even like when a few years later in 06, 07, that was when Greg Oden and Mike Conley and the Ohio State men's basketball team was in the national championship, as well as Troy Smith and the Buckeyes. Obviously a huge year for Ohio State sports. That was really the year where I started to be like all in on it. I remember some of my friends weren't even like quite into the stage of getting into sports yet, but I was like already like pretending to be Ted Ginn, throwing a football like up to myself, pretending I was different Ohio State players. So that's very much ingrained in my kind of DNA. And so, I eventually got to Ohio State. I didn't have a major for my first 2 years, but I always kind of in the back of my pocket, I really liked journalism from my high school days. And even I still didn't even really merge the sports with my writing necessarily. And so I just kind of fell into being the beat writer for the Ohio State women's hockey team. That would be in my junior year. And I just had a blast doing that. I love doing that. I love talking to the players, talking to the coaches, researching stats. Even like years and years ago, like I would do, some type of sports writing, like making my own like fantasy teams and like best players from this decade, that decade type of thing. But then I covered the women's hockey team, and then that spring I ended up just interviewing to become the Lantern's sports editor, and I got the job. And ever since then, I've kind of been fast-tracked, getting a lot of experience as I've gone along and having a blast doing it. So that road has kind of taken me here.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you get that top job in the sports department at the Lantern, which is, a huge deal, and you get the opportunity to cover football and basketball. I mean, I know I saw you on the beat all the time. What are some of your favorite memories of of going through that process?
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely such a learning experience, and especially like going from covering a much smaller team, a women's hockey team, to then going right up to basketball and football. Obviously, it was super cool, but it was just very different in terms of the level of personal touch and access and everything. But me and my team, we had a blast. Going on the road, figuring out our road trip situation. Going to Arizona last year for the Fiesta Bowl in December. That was a blast. I had never really been very far into the west coast of the country, so it was super cool to see kind of the scenery out there, the mountains, being in Paradise Valley. That was a blast. We ran into a bunch of logistical problems with like the enterprise rental cars and all that stuff. A bunch of hoops to jump through. But it all worked out for the best. And then I guess, more recently than that, even when we went up to Indianapolis for the Big Ten tournament, the basketball tournament, that's when obviously everything started getting shut down at the beginning of kind of mid-March there, when the tournaments were getting canceled, and it, like, from minute to minute there was new stuff coming out, more things getting canceled, and we were just darting around Indianapolis, like, writing a ton of stories in the back of our car, hot spotting for Wi-Fi, just being glued to our phones and stuff like that. That was really an exhilarating experience. It did kind of shut down our the last part of our senior year at Ohio State, obviously, because we didn't come back to in-person classes, and everything after that was kind of through Zoom and whatnot. But that was certainly an experience that I'll never forget, in this past year of covering Ohio State sports.
Yeah, they absolutely talk about the experiences that you go through and how you'll remember them. I mean, you go through a virtual graduation, you're running around Indianapolis as sports are getting canceled en masse, as, we're entering the COVID-19 scare and everything along those lines. So, you certainly will have a lot of things to look back at 20, 30, 40 years from now, and like, hey, when I was just really getting started, we went through one of those situations that everybody will remember where they were when that type of stuff was going on.
Yes, without a doubt.
Well, we're going to talk a little bit more about sports in general and some things that we hope to accomplish moving forward, but let's take a quick break and hear from one of our fantastic sponsors. Hague Water Conditioning has been treating well in city water in Central Ohio with American-made water filtration products for over 60 years. Have a water quality problem? The water treatment experts at Hague know how to solve it. Not sure if your water softener is working? They will test, inspect, and sanitize any brand of water softener for only $20. Schedule a system checkup or water test today by calling 614-836-2195 or visit them online at HagueH2O.com. That's HAGUE H2O.com. Welcome back to the BIA podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Noon, joined by Griffin Strom here, and we are just talking a little bit of sports freeform right now. A big date coming up, June 8th, Ohio State's going to be able to go back to voluntary workouts. We're certainly not we're not entering normal by any stretch of the imagination, but, when your profession is writing about sports, it's got to feel pretty good knowing that we're clearing another hurdle toward the ultimate goal of seeing some competition.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I know you just yesterday, I believe booked our flight tickets to Oregon. Kind of hopeful that game, that big, first huge landmark for Ohio State coming so early in the season this year. Even just seeing that those flights were booked for me just kind of felt like, okay, like I'm feeling pretty good about stuff. I mean, I know every day that the NBA is talking about their plans for coming back. The UFC, for example, has been doing events. So everything kind of feels like it's moving back into finding solutions for the problems that have kind of kept everything canceled and postponed for the time being.
What are you looking most forward to? Not so much in terms of actual games, but when will you feel like we are, in terms of a sports calendar, back to somewhat of even a within normalcy? When will you say, okay, we're kind of getting out of the woods?
Hmm. Um, it's tough. I mean, there's so many hypotheticals with what type of situation we're going to have to come back to in terms of even like how much press can be at certain things. I guess for me, the point in which things would feel more normal when it comes to at least covering sports and what we do is when we will actually be able to once again gather for in-person press conferences and stuff like that. Because I feel like that will be kind of a first step, and who knows how many members of the press and stuff will be allowed to kind of be packed into the press conference area. But I think once that opens back up, that's when I'll be like, okay, it's starting to feel back to normal again.
Yeah, exactly. We've all talked about that. What's the press box going to look like? What are Tuesday and Wednesday interviews going to look like? I don't think anybody over in the administration has any idea either at this point. So
Right.
anything we could speculate here, the first week of June is going to be very different than, when we get to that point, whether they, during a return to play in July, allow us a little bit more access, or if they say see you in August, or they say see you in September. A lot of uncertainty there. So it'll be something interesting to monitor as the days and weeks go by. I kind of want to wrap things up by saying, what are some things that you're working on here, in your first week going into your second week, Buckeye Grove? I know we had the opportunity to sit down for lunch earlier this week and kind of went over some story ideas. And, I'm not even sure which ones that, you really took a shine to, but what are a couple of things that you think that you might be pushing out here in the coming days?
Yeah. So right now, there's not a lot of concrete things, happening right now, obviously with the pandemic and everything happening. But I really like to jump into a little bit of recent history and speculation and stuff like that sometimes. So right now, one of the things I'm working on is looking at some of the multi-year starters at quarterback for Ohio State in the last since like 2002. And seeing what the leap that they made from their first year as kind of the solidified starter to their second year, because obviously one of the big questions for Ohio State is, can Justin Fields improve on a season where he was, near perfect for a lot of the season, a 51 total touchdown, 3 interception season. It's like, how do you really improve on that? But it was only his first year in Ryan Day's system, and we haven't seen an Ohio State quarterback have a second year as a starter under Ryan Day. So I think a lot of people are wondering, can he be even better? Can he, win a Heisman? And so I've just been enjoying kind of digging through the more recent history of what Ohio State quarterbacks have been able to do in their second year as a starter.
Yeah, I think that. Oh, I'm sorry. I was just going to say, I think that's going to be a real interesting deep dive that you're going to be able to do, and I'm looking forward to seeing what your results are. But go ahead.
Yeah. And so then outside of that, I know on Thursday, Chris Holtman and his wife Lori Holtman are doing a little webinar, I think over Zoom, with Sports and Society with Ohio State, and so that'll be an opportunity to ask some questions about everything that's been going on. Obviously, Seth Towns the other day got detained for being out with the protests. I think that'll be an interesting thing to talk to him about, and just his thoughts about things potentially getting back to normal, what he sees as the main obstacles to that right now, and just checking in with him as well. So that'll be another thing to look forward to a little bit.
Yeah, well, there's definitely going to be a lot of exciting stuff coming up here at Buckeye Grove as we continue to go through a bit of a metamorphosis here, but I'm very excited about the future. I mean, before we call it a show, anything else you'd like to add?
And I would just like to say, I'm thrilled to be aboard. I'm kind of adjusting to the new site and everything. I did that year with the Lantern, got really comfortable with that system. Now I'm going into another system, so I'm really just trying to get acclimated to that. The message board, trying to dive in there, and I'm already having a blast, honestly, in my first just couple of days with how everything's run here at Buckeye Grove. I'm so excited to be back in Columbus and not having to move uproot and move across the country right this second. I'm very glad to come back to Ohio State, be around everything I know, and continue covering the teams that I've really paid a lot of attention to for my entire life. It's a very natural fit for me, and I'm looking forward to doing great work here at the Buckeye Grove with the new staff and you and everyone we bring along.
Well, we're very excited to have you, and I can't wait for what the future is going to hold. And I want to thank Griffin for joining us. And I'm going to wrap this show up here now and, just remind everybody to check us out at BuckeyeGrove.com. And we are looking forward to everything that the future holds. Telling everybody out there, be safe, and, we will see you next time.
Be sure to stay up to date with Buckeye Grove Instant Access when the news breaks or after the big game. Exclusively at BuckeyeGrove.com or anytime on SoundCloud, iTunes, Google Play, or Stitcher as part of the Unscripted Ohio Podcast Network. Hit that subscribe button so you can stay in the know and never miss a single episode.